And my next interview with Martyn Perkins, member for Garff here, looking back on year 4 to 5 into 5, and that's where we'll start. But first of all, everybody else, just how's you think the government did with the COVID situation?
I think the government did really well, Paul. I mean, if you look at the beginning of the year, we had Brexit underway, we had the climate change bill underway, and then wallop, out of the blue, we suddenly had COVID. And I've got to say, I take my hat off to the civil servants across department. Reaction to it was exemplary.
You talk about the Treasury package that they came up with really fast.
Yeah, but the civil servants working from each department, working with others. Each department had to relinquish people to help with the track and tracing, and that worked a treat, and I'm sure that held us in good stead. By doing the tracking and tracing religiously, we managed to get on top of it. I think the health advice that was given, Henrietta Ewart, Catherine Magson, with just 2 bits of advice for Howard Quayle and David Ashford to take on board, again stood us in good stead. If you look at Boris, he's probably got about 28 different advisors giving him information, whereas we had a clear path we followed. The people also deserve a pat on the back because they took it to their hearts. And you heard of the odd story of people finishing up in Derby, but on the whole, everybody was absolutely fantastic.
Okay, let's park that one, and that's obviously affected things, because we talk each year what you've done, and this is this section we're looking back, and it was transplants, organ transplants last year, but did that get hit?
Well, it's still on the go, Paul, but what actually happened was, with all this other legislation going through, and then we found out that the Human Tissue Act was sadly lacking, and so while it was last reviewed in 2002, that was the last legislation, and of course legislation always lags behind technology, and as the advance in medical science and all the rest of it, the Human Tissue Act was sadly behind, so we had to make sure that was brought up to date. So the bill has actually changed its name. It's the Organ Donating and Human Tissue Bill. So that is a big raft of legislation behind that.
How bogged down is it? I mean, one of your big things is this, wasn't it?
It is ready to go, and I know I said that last time because we were within a couple of weeks of getting the other the transplant bit, which has more or less stayed the same. It's opt out. If you really do not want your organs to be donated, you opt out. But make your wishes known to your relatives, and the best bet is to sign up to the National Health Service organ donating database. You can say, I don't want my organs. You can lodge your decision there. So that's good. But that is ongoing. There's a lot of other stuff ongoing. I mean, you were just talking briefly about the COVID situation, and I know that you say the OFT is a toothless tiger.
Did I say that?
No. Well, certain commentators had. You might have. I might be doing.
Well, it has that. Maybe it feels like that almost from the general public's point of view. I don't know. But you're on the inside of this. Are they doing a good job?
Well, when things go well, you never hear about it. And it's when things go badly, and it's the same throughout government. The stuff we had to do behind the scenes, they had no hand sanitizer in the middle of COVID, right at the beginning of COVID. We couldn't get any. The police were running out, health service were running out, and Finoddery, the distillery, came up and said, look, we might be able to help out. So the OFT said, right, great, what can you actually do? So they made some hand sanitizer. The OFT and the government analyst, Paul Moulton and his team, we worked round the clock to get it certified that it was what it said it was, and got it back out to the public. And that was a tremendous effort over 2 weeks. It saved the day in some respects.
But now we're battling things, and I'm one of them actually, an airline that seems to be very sluggish on any refunds. Is that something that you get involved with, or is that something that only you go back to the airline and that's the end of it?
We do get involved with it, but if you read the small print, they know their rights, Paul. And we're coming on to having our own airline, aren't we?
We'll come to that in the next section when we look forward, because I know it's
of course.
But looking back on this year, or in the whole term, what are you pleased with? What are you happy with? What's not happened?
I'm still a bit frustrated, but I understand the reasons why. And I think in COVID, you get very close to the officers and the actual people that are involved in it, and you can understand what they're going through. And what I hope is that the government processes keep this united across department working.
It won't. Sorry. I mean, everyone thinks the best. It's like the World War II spirit.
But if you say that, it won't happen, will it? But
am I being too harsh? Do you think it might actually?
I think people have learned some good lessons from it, and I think best practice. We've got to, as politicians, we set the agenda, and we've got to make sure that policy is followed.
Okay. Well, what else were you up to last year then, or terms of what's been going on before
Last year,
this hit in? What were you getting on with besides what you just said?
I mean, there's sort of some phenomenal crises. I mean, Laxey flooding, of course.
Yeah.
We're 1st of October is a year since the floods. Making sure that DEFRA, and again across department, making sure the Manx Utilities, DEFRA, DOI all work together to try and alleviate the floods. And it's not just Laxey. This is island wide. If you look at the report that's been done on it, is it something like 6,000 homes across the island are at risk of flooding?
Yeah, but clearly your patch is getting the worst of it.
Absolutely, and lessons can be learned from Laxey.
Lessons can be learned?
Yeah, well, maintenance, the report came back, the ARIP report, and it didn't actually say anything that Laxey people didn't know. We knew all this already. The commissioners and Daphne and I had raised questions beforehand. I'd raised it in the Eastern Plan about development above the normal line and extra water flooding down because of all these new houses. And it came out and said all that. But the underlying thing was lack of maintenance. And everybody in Laxey knew as soon as they
I went up there and saw it.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly trees were way too near the edge, and that flood did what it did and took them down, right?
Yeah, well, you collared me
sorted.
on the bridge, didn't you, that very first morning? Yeah.
Yes.
And it's exactly that. We saw these logs and things coming down, which should have been maintained, which weren't. But now there's things in place to make sure that happens. They've got the debris catcher up at the bottom of Glenroy.
It's a shame it takes something like that to happen, though, before it gets sorted out.
The thing that worries me, it happened in 2015, and it sort of dwindled away, but I've got a feeling now that there is a concerted effort put in place. But of course, if you've lost your house and when these people that were hit losing their house and then suddenly COVID, they're in rented accommodation, not even in their own home, and they're quarantining in a small flat that they've managed to get or whatever.
I mean, there's people still in Laxey, as you say, that are out of, and they can't sell their properties probably. Goodness knows what insurance levels they're paying as well.
Well, insurance for everybody with IM4-7 in their postcode, the database for the insurance company says it's a high risk area.
Right.
And furthermore, if you look at your insurance applications now, it says, are you in 600 metres of a watercourse? Well, in actual fact, probably everybody on the island is almost in that situation. Yeah. But we've got to try and get confidence back. I'm trying to get the Treasury to do this flood situation that we've got in the UK, whereby the government the insurance companies charge an extra small premium to underwrite it, but it means a change in UK law. So we've got to try and get to grips.
Good luck with that one.
Well, we've got to try and get to grips with doing something
Insurance companies don't want to pay out unless they have to. I mean, who does?
They don't want to pay out anyway, do they?
I don't want to go that far, but insurance will cover you once, and then after that you're on your own, most likely. But we don't get into that thing. How do you get on with Daphne, by the way? Because obviously you two always seem to be on the same side, as far as I can see. Anyway, things obviously with floods, and that's obvious. Yeah. But do you work well as a?
We're not exactly Pinky and Perky, Paul, but we
Pinky and Perky. People of a certain age. Yeah. I'm trying to think of Ant and Deck.
We get on well. I mean, we think of different things. We have different views on different things, but we.
What were you different though?
Well, Daphne was dead against the sewage scheme as it was.
Well, you couldn't take a position, could you, on that? Because
I had to, because I was chair of planning, and I had to
withdraw from
while it was on the go. I had to withdraw.
You weren't for it, were you, for that sewage?
I was very wary. I was. One of the problems is, what are we going to do?
Plan B.
What is Plan B? And I know that the MU went through absolutely everything. They looked at different sites, they looked at different options, they looked at the Everlasting Bend, they looked at the old End Cafe.
No one wants it.
Nobody wants it
near them, do they?
Now the problem is, what is going to happen to the pumping stations? Where is that going to go? You're going to have another one halfway up.
Yeah.
So, and I was a bit surprised the commissioners didn't twig this, that elsewhere in Laxey there's going to be tremendous upheaval, and if it had gone where it was, and I know as a historic harbour and all that sort of stuff, what would the Victorians have done? They'd have got on with it and made a fancy...
So let me get this right, you were actually for it then?
No.
You're not saying against it, so you're more for it than against?
I was probably for it rather than against, but with reservations that it had to be properly screened. We had to have proper understanding of the...
Well, something has to be done, doesn't it? I mean, now we're back into...
2006, we've signed up to the international obligations of 2006 water quality, the island as a whole. Now, there's Peel, there's Laxey, and there's Baldrine, and we need to do something about that. But the irony of it is, Paul, the Laxey Beach Day couple of weekends ago, there was probably about 150 people swimming in the water anyway.
Yeah,
and
untreated
New
sewage
Year's Day, there was 370 odd people going for a New Year's Day dip.
Yeah.
So how high is it on everybody's agenda? I mean, people have a selective memory, don't they? That's the problem. But that is ongoing, and the constituency work is to try and get the best deal we possibly can for these people.